I'm Daniel Levine, and this is the Bio Report. For many patients with rare and difficult to diagnose conditions, it can take many years and many doctors to find a correct answer. CrowdMed is trying to offer an alternative to patients by allowing them to tap the wisdom of crowds and letting medical detectives who sign on to the site try to find the right answer. We spoke to Jared Heyman, founder and CEO of CrowdMed, about the problem with the traditional way doctors diagnose patients, the wisdom of crowds, and the case for making medicine a team sport. Jared, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. It's great to be here.
We're going to talk about CrowdMed today, but I thought it might be useful to start with your sister. Can you talk about her experiences and how that helped inspire CrowdMed?
Sure. So my sister spent 3 years with a really terrible undiagnosed medical condition. It came on all of a sudden, and her symptoms were very strange, and she had a lot of kind of misdiagnoses and underdiagnoses during the next 3 years as she bounced from doctor to doctor, seeking the correct root cause of her symptoms. And I saw as she went through this incredibly inefficient process of seeing one specialist at a time, and he or she would often work in isolation and just seeing things through the lens of their own narrow specialty. And no one was really taking a holistic view at her health. And she would only have 15 minutes maximum with any given doctor, and they weren't really collaborating or working together in any way. And it took way too long, way too much money, and way too much suffering before she finally got a correct diagnosis and treatment plan. And I happen to know about this phenomenon called the wisdom of crowds, which is the notion that large groups of people are collectively much smarter than even the smartest individual experts in the world, including even the smartest doctors in the world. Yet medicine is very much based upon seeing one person at a time, and that's one person working in isolation. So I wanted to apply everything I knew about crowd wisdom and how to capture it to helping people like my sister with rare or difficult to diagnose medical conditions.
CrowdMed wasn't your first experience with crowdsourcing. You worked for a market research firm, InfoServe, that taps the wisdom of crowds, as it were. What did that teach you about the value of crowdsourcing, and what made you think it was transferable to medical diagnostics?
Well, after spending 10 years at InfoServe, I really gained an appreciation for how incredibly wise crowds can be. And I also learned various different mechanisms for tapping into that collective intelligence, that collective wisdom. One obvious mechanism is surveys. And InfoServe launched as an online survey company. And through surveys, you can collect information from hundreds of people, combine that statistically and distill it down into one answer. And those answers are often very accurate. But I also spent my last 2 or 3 years at InfoServe taking a deep dive into prediction markets. And a prediction market is another mechanism for capturing crowd wisdom, but it's like a virtual stock market where people can place bets. Some prediction markets, they can actually bet using dollars, and other prediction markets, they bet using points. But people place bets on what they think is the most likely outcome, and the prediction market mechanism can look at their aggregate betting behavior to assign very accurate probabilities to potential outcomes. And I saw how incredibly powerful prediction markets were, and we even developed a prediction market product specifically to answer questions of interest to market researchers, like which of these products will sell the most, or which of these marketing or logo designs will move the most product. But I thought it would be even better if we could harness the power prediction market to answer a question of interest to a medical patient, namely, what is most likely to be my correct diagnosis, or what is most likely to be the correct treatment or solution to my illness. And at CrowdMed, we actually borrowed a lot of the same underlying intellectual property, or we literally share a patent with InfoServe on this prediction market mechanism, but we tailored it to specifically for medical diagnosis and solutions, and it works incredibly well.
So how do you apply a predictive model to medical diagnostics?
So the way it works is we post a medical case on our site, and we collect that case by asking the patient a series of questions about their symptoms and their medical history and their family medical history, what medications they're on. They can upload diagnostic test results, imaging test results. Some even anonymize and upload their entire medical records. So we start by collecting all this data around the medical case at hand. And then we expose it to our community of what we call medical detectives. And these are people out there, most of them work in or study medicine. So for the most part, professional doctors or medical students or nurses or acupuncturists or nutritionists, which is different types of medical professionals. And they examine the case. They can suggest unique diagnoses or solutions. They can bet points on suggestions that other people have made to express how much confidence they have in that diagnosis or solution. And they can win points and even cash by making smart bets. They can also win points and cash by suggesting what turns out to be the right answer, or by also just impressing the patient. Patients can allocate up to 80% of their reward to those detectives who subjectively they just found most helpful. But basically, it's all about creating the right incentives, where the medical detectives are incentivized to suggest insightful things, to really rally around good, smart answers, to downgrade or to even flag and eliminate bad answers, and to be helpful to the patient. So we've created an alignment of incentives. We've created the right mechanism for collecting unique ideas and gathering consensus around them. And we've also incorporated a lot of communication and collaboration features that allow medical detectives to work very closely with the patient and also to work with each other to discuss and debate and try to basically work towards resolving the case in a collective fashion.
It would seem that this approach would have its greatest value on diagnosing atypical or rare diseases, where getting people with a wide range of experiences might allow for someone to recognize something that might not be top of mind for most doctors. Has that been the experience?
Absolutely. What we've seen on CrowdMed is the patients who get the most value from our site are those that have rare or difficult to diagnose conditions. It could be even an uncommon presentation of a common illness, but things that really doctors can't easily identify, and they're not, as you say, top of mind for a lot of physicians. So things they don't see often and things that are often misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed in the medical system for whatever reason. If we look back statistically over the 1,000+ cases that we've resolved to date, we see that 95% of the final correct diagnoses have come up only once or twice ever in the history of our site. So it's an incredibly diverse group of diagnoses and a real long tail phenomena where it's a lot of things that come up very infrequently as opposed to a few things that come up frequently, which makes sense because if these were common illnesses or things that were easy to diagnose, the patient wouldn't have needed CrowdMed in the first place.
Well, you refer to these people who do the diagnoses as medical detectives. These are retired doctors, nurses, medical students. Did you need to reach some sort of credible critical mass with people or with people with medical experience to make this work?
Well, I would say that our system works better and better as we have more medical detectives on the platform. And the reason for that is we can do a better job of matching up a patient that needs some unique insight with the medical detective out there who might have that unique insight. So it's what we call network effects, where the more people we have on both sides of our network, the better everything works. And in terms of critical mass, at this point we have several thousand medical detectives who have logged into the site and been active on it in the past few months. Hundreds on there right now, solving medical mysteries in terms of current active users. And what we've seen is the fact that we can tap into this massive community is much better than a patient just talking to one specialist, at a time, and that one person working in isolation. But I've often said what's really I think the enemy of patients is a sample size of n equals 1. Even if we only have 5 medical detectives on a case, which is actually not a lot for us, because on average we get more than 20 medical detectives on a case. But even if we only got 5, that's a lot better than the patient just talking to one doctor working in isolation and happen to rely exclusively on that one person's opinion.
You talked a little about the incentives people have for solving a case, but I suspect there's an issue of status here, and that as your status rises within the CrowdMed community, you're able to do more. Can you explain how that works and how it incentivizes people?
So you're absolutely right. And in fact, we've seen that the soft incentives, things like status, reputation, prestige, intellectual challenge, these are actually more motivating for our detectives than even the cash that they can win. And we have some detectives who have made thousands of dollars. But if you look at how much money the average detective makes per hour they spend on the site, it's just a few bucks. So they're clearly not doing it for the money. In terms of our reputation system, which you've touched upon, that's a very important aspect of CrowdMed. And I think part of why it works so well is we do provide different levels of influence to medical detectives who have really proven themselves over time. We've encapsulated it in what we call our detective rating, or DR system, where every detective has a score from 1 to 10, their DR score. And with a higher DR score, they have more privileges, more influence, more status, and basically their votes count more heavily than those who are, say, have lower scores or haven't yet proven themselves. So not everyone has the same voice on our site. But interestingly, we've decided to base DR scores on prior performance and not on formal medical credentials, which is a real departure from the traditional medical system, where your status and your influence is based entirely on your formal credentials, whether, say, you're a doctor or a nurse, or if you're a doctor, say, how many years you've been in practice. We want to base it on actual real-world performance, and we've seen that a lot of our top performers are not necessarily the most credentialed.
It typically takes, on average, 7 years to diagnose a rare disease, and people with rare diseases are going to go through a lot of misdiagnosis through that. Given that in your world, you're having people self-selected with complex cases, how has the track record been, and how long does it typically take to correctly diagnose a case?
Well, we're very proud of our track record to date, and I can give you a few statistics to kind of illustrate that. So, first of all, we've now resolved over 1,000 real-world medical cases on our site, and we launched only 2 years ago. And after resolving 1,000 cases, we've been able to take a step back and kind of look at who these patients are and our overall success rate. To give you an idea, first of all, of how difficult these cases are, the average patient who submits a case on our site has already been sick for 8 years, so not far away from that 7-year average that you mentioned it takes rare disease patients to get a diagnosis. They've already seen on average 8 different physicians before they submitted a case on our site. And they and their payer have already incurred over $60,000 in medical expenses on average by the time they submit their case. So these are very chronic, long-term, very difficult, and very expensive cases. Despite the incredible difficulty of these cases, our overall success rate is over 60%. So that's the percentage of our patients who tell us after their CrowdMed case is closed that they got insights on our site that ultimately led them closer to either a correct diagnosis or cure, which is what we really shoot for. So it's accurate to say that most of the time we're able to successfully resolve a case that 8 doctors on average could not.
And any sense how doctors react to this? What happens when a patient walks into a medical office with a CrowdMed diagnosis?
Well, we've seen that, first of all, doctors have this knee-jerk allergic reaction to anything that patients bring in from the internet. Doctors are accustomed to patients coming into their office with these huge printouts from WebMD or Google searches, and the doctor has to spend time explaining to the patient why, no, your headache is not brain cancer. It's just a migraine. And doctors actually have kind of developed this fear of anything the patient brings in from the internet. But what we have to educate doctors on is when a patient brings in a CrowdMed report, this is not something the patient just came up with on their own through online research. This is the consensus opinion of 20 or more people who know what they're talking about, real human beings who have collaborated on trying to solve this patient's case from incredibly diverse medical backgrounds, and having no incentive other than giving the patient insights that lead them to a correct diagnosis or cure. And once the doctors understand that the CrowdMed results are something fundamentally different, and once they read through the report and see how high quality these diagnostic and solution suggestions are, and how well reasoned and well supported they are through the medical detective's comments, then they say, "Oh wow, this is something new and different, and these are actually some insightful suggestions. So I'll take these seriously."
We're in this remarkable time of transformation of healthcare that in many ways is being fueled by technology and the rise of the patient taking control of their own medical care in ways I think were unimaginable 10 years ago. How do you see CrowdMed fitting into these broader trends?
Well, we are certainly part of this trend towards medical innovation, which I think is so much needed in our healthcare system. There's lots of ways to fix or improve the system as it stands today. And we've just decided that we're going to be a component of that. And our mission is to apply crowdsourcing and the wisdom of crowds to something that has traditionally been something that is done in isolation. Another way of saying it is we're trying to transform medicine from an individual sport to a team sport. And while we can't solve every woe in the U.S. healthcare system doing this, we are certainly providing orders of magnitude improvement in terms of the time and cost of solving difficult medical cases. Maybe the 2 or 3 or 5% of the most difficult medical cases and expensive medical cases in our system. And we think we can do a lot of good for the healthcare system as a whole by providing these efficiencies.
Jared Heyman, founder and CEO of CrowdMed. Jared, thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. The Bio Report is a production of the Levine Media Group. To automatically download this podcast each week, subscribe to our RSS feed or through iTunes or other podcast manager. To join our mailing list, go to levinemediagroup.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to drop us a line or are interested in sponsoring this podcast, send an email to danny@levinemediagroup.com. Special thanks to Jonah Levine, who composed our theme music, and the Jonah Levine Collective, which performs it.